is the survey. Did you guys see that survey? It's in between week 1 and week 4.
Yeah, I did it already.
Oh, good, good. Did anybody else do it? They kind of got on me about it. They were like, make sure your students do the survey. I was like, oops, I forgot myself. So if you haven't done it, if you can do that for us, that'd be great. The second thing is I want to let you guys know. So yesterday we were supposed to be in chapter 13, and today we're doing chapter 14. Yesterday's attendance is open, so we will need to go back and do yesterday's attendance. I'm going to give you the attendance question here in a minute. So just make sure that you go back and do that. It'll stay open until 10 o'clock tonight as well. And then, of course, your question for tonight. So they will count attendance for tomorrow, but they're going to count it for today. So please make sure you go and turn that in. That way you can get your attendance. All of the assignments I'm going to adjust to have them do, give you guys just a couple more, a little bit more time instead of it everything being due tomorrow, with the exception of the final and the final project, which is due on Thursday anyway. I'm going to extend out all of your assignments until Thursday. Thursday, the other assignments Thursday at 6 to give you guys time to turn those things in, but then you'll still have time to do your final and midterm. I think they've even extended that until midnight, I believe. But hopefully you guys just get that done and get it out of the way. I don't know who's graduating, but you don't want that drama. I would just say try to get everything done. It's been open anyway. The midterm, the final's been open since Friday. I forgot to mention that. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys got that email saying that or not, but at any rate, the final's open, so you can do your final at any time. You can turn in your final project at any time. I'm going to try to get all the grades done as soon as possible. Obviously, even myself, I'm a day behind, so I got to try to get caught up as well as everybody else. But so let's jump into chapter 13 really, really quickly. It's not much to it. It really just talks about your first day on the job. We all have what they call imposter syndrome, which is just basically like, okay, yeah, I got this degree, I passed the test. Are y'all really going to make me an electrician? Right? Let's just be honest. There's many of us that would be really nervous about that. You're starting the job, and I don't care if you're a doctor, a teacher, everybody. You get nervous doing something for the first time. They call that imposter syndrome. You thinking that you shouldn't be there, but at the end of the day, they hired you. They thought enough of you to give you the job, so you should be there. So, your first day on the job, yes, it is going to be nerve wracking. There are a lot of things that you will have to do, a lot of paperwork you'll have to fill out, a lot of systems they'll tell you about, but don't be so overwhelmed, with the first day. Everybody knows that, right? Everybody has a first day somewhere. Um, just make sure when you fill out those forms, just make sure you bring all your documents. I probably am a minority person in the sense that I carry my social security card around. I hear some people don't do that. I don't know where I got into that habit. I think somewhere in the military I must have gotten into that habit of doing that. But I know some people like my mom still has my social security card. Like get your social security card, okay? And your birth certificate if you can. So you can have those things, right? Make sure you ask them where the first day training is going to be. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to just start the job. You're probably going to be in training, and I know a lot of us get so excited about, oh my God, the first day on the job. And then we get there, and for 2 days, we're just sitting in the HR training session because you have to listen to the whole spiel and do all the paperwork, right? But make sure you know where it's going to be. Maybe your job site is at whatever project you're on, but the training is at the corporate office. So make sure you ask the HR person where you're going to be. Most of you guys won't be remote workers, so you don't have to worry about that. And, that's a good question to ask too. Like, I mean, how many days, is the training going to be? So you'll just know, especially if you have to travel to a place that you weren't expecting to travel to, you'll need to know, okay, do I need to make arrangements? Maybe you have kids you have to pick up or whatever. Most importantly, though, guys, when you are in these trainings, that is the time to ask questions, especially if this is a corporate job and you're going to get benefits and 401k plans and tuition assistance and all that kind of stuff. Like your supervisor may not be able to answer those questions for you. They may not even take the insurance. So you don't want to ask your supervisor these types of questions. These are the questions that you want to get asked when you are in those meetings. So make sure that you are asking those people At the training session, all those different types of questions, everything from your badge, who do I call for an emergency, IT questions, where's my password, all those things in that training is the time to ask those questions, right? Some other questions that people ask is like, when do I update my LinkedIn? I got this new job. Look at me. I'm really excited. You can do it whenever you want to. I tend to wait 30 days because I just want to make sure this is somewhere I'm going to lay my head and where I'm going to be. There have been instances I've seen people, believe it or not, they take a job and they'll stay for a week, but the job that they really wanted hadn't reached out to them. And then the job reaches out to them and they end up taking the other job and then they just bounce and leave. You'd be surprised, or you'll get to the job and then the job will say, oh my God, we didn't realize. That this job does have travel, or or something else they tell you that you're not happy with, or maybe they decide to move in a different direction. I've seen companies let people go after having hired them, right? So you don't know what the scenario is going to be. Remember, that's those first 90 days is a trial both for you and for them. So, when you post them on your social network is up to you, but I would say give it a couple of weeks at least. That's just my advice. Um, Performance evaluations may be a big deal at certain companies. That's something you may or may not have to deal with. Not sure how many of you have ever had one before, but it could be a big deal in your career, especially if companies are big into performance evaluations. Let's say you go work for the state government or something, and government entities are really big on evaluations, and they can follow you, especially if you decide to stay at the government for a minute, and so you'll want to make sure that you really understand that performance evaluation process and that you understand how you can do good on your evaluations. So when you're in the HR, they'll talk to you if they have them at all, but just know that performance evaluations are a big part of your career. We talked a lot about etiquette as well. Obviously we know, what's proper etiquette by now, what is considered, being professional, what not to do, understanding that there's social norms at every environment. It's really good to make sure you understand what the social norms is. Every company has a certain culture. One corporate culture could be totally different from another. Typically, it's managed by the top, whatever that CEO is, whether he's decided or she's decided that the workplace is going to be more family oriented, or maybe it's going to be more stoic and stern. Maybe they like people hanging out together. Maybe they don't like hanging out to people with, people together. So just make sure give yourself an opportunity to really like see what's going on around you. Maybe it's an environment you like, maybe it's an environment that you don't like, especially if it's an environment that can be a little bit more toxic, and we all know what those cultures are. Unfortunately, I worked for a CEO that was very toxic. Like, he told people right out of the gate, hey, I was ex-military and I used to be a cop, so I don't trust anybody, so I'm always very suspicious. That's just my nature. And true to his word, he made sure that he didn't trust anything anybody said until you proved to him that you were telling the truth. I'm like, this is the craziest environment I've ever been in my life. Like, dude was nuts. I'm not even gonna lie. And he was an ex-Marine too, and so he made everybody feel like they had to be on edge, and he actually enjoyed it. I'm like, this is a very toxic culture, and so all the different things, you want to really just make sure you know where you're at, especially if you're looking for a place to get, 3 good years in before you go on to start your own business. Do you really want to be in an environment where you feel like you're being interrogated for 3 years? So those are another reasons why you don't really know if you're going to stay at a company until you really get there. And I would say keep your options open. Now, I'm not one to tell people go from one job to the next, but I am telling you life is short and you want to make sure that you are somewhere that makes sense for you and it's going to bring you the most peace. I am not one to stick around at any place where I don't feel that I can grow or that's too toxic. Like, I can't even thrive in those types of environments. Um, Another type of training that you'll get a lot is your safety training. This will be, especially for your industry, but any industry really here at Southern Tech, you will be getting a lot of training, a lot of workplace safety training, a lot of hazardous training. That could be a part of your first initial sets of training. So again, be ready to sit down for a minute and do a lot of training. Okay. So that's really what chapter 13 talks about. Here is your conference question from yesterday. So let's go ahead and write this down. If you want to jump over and do it really quick, it's fine. The question says, what is your biggest first day anxiety? That's your question for from yesterday. What is your biggest first day anxiety? Give you a second to write that down, and then I'm going to move over to chapter 14. What is your biggest first day anxiety? Let me stop this and start the next one. What is your biggest first day anxiety? Hey, it could be really simple. Mine is always getting lost. I don't know why I have this big fear of getting lost. I always like to walk into things like I'm cool, calm, and collected. I hate looking nervous when I walk in somewhere. What is your biggest first day anxiety? That's the question from yesterday. Now remember you do have until tonight at 10 to get that done. All right. So when we talk about chapter 14 is going to piggyback a little bit off of last week when we talked about professionalism. And then it's just going to jump into this thing called multi-generational workplaces, which, I enjoy having that conversation. A lot of us know about it, but when I talk about it, you'll understand. So in chapter 14, it's just really reiterating the fact that guess what, guys? Maybe you didn't know. Of course you knew. You are a professional now. When you get a certification, anytime you get a higher degree, there is a higher standard. People expect you to be a professional. When an electrician shows up at your house, guess what? You expect him or her to know about electricity. Big surprise, right? They're a professional. You expect them to act that way, right? That includes workplace skills, but this other thing that we call self management skills. Now, when it comes to self management skills, what are we talking about? That means is your ability to control your own behavior, right? We saw it in the test on the midterm. We talk about workplace skills, workplace ethics, how you behave. A lot of people got that wrong. They got it confused with business ethics. That's how the business performs. Workplace ethics, workplace skills is how you behave, how you control your behavior. It does include things like punctuality and dependability and time management, but one I really want to focus on is this idea called emotional regulation. So nobody has to tell us what does it mean to be on time, being punctual, be on time. Duh, right? We don't even talk about that. Being dependable, being trustworthy, say what you mean what you say. A lot of you will be working on project teams. You don't want to get that reputation of, yeah, we don't really want Toby on our team, and we don't really want Sarah on our team because they never show up on time. They're not dependable. They never finish the project. It always makes us behind. Like, you don't want to be that guy or girl, right? You don't want that drama because that can carry you over into your career. And like I said before, your industry is small. You don't want to be known as the person that doesn't do things on time. You don't want to be known as the person that doesn't finish a project. Um, Also, organizing your time. You also don't want to be known as the person that takes on too much. Has really shoddy work. You want to have a sense of excellence about yourself because it is your reputation, right? And then most importantly is this thing called emotional regulation, right? Knowing how to control your own emotions. That may sound very psychological, but guess what, guys? It's a big deal. When you go into other people's jobs and they're giving you all this different work to do, sometimes it can be stressful. Like, work is stressful. That is not a big surprise. But how do you handle it is the point. So many people lose their jobs because they don't know how to handle their own emotions. We probably all have seen it in the past. Like, we know of people that don't know how to handle their emotions, and the people expect you to handle your emotions being a professional. That means you have to know yourself, know what your triggers are. I know I am a person that likes to see the big picture. I like details. I hate being on a project, working with a lot of people, and we've all been in these meetings where everybody's talking, yada yada yada. Before that meeting is over, I need to know what are the next steps, who's doing what, when are we going to meet again. Like, I need that. I learned that about myself from working with teams. Now, there are some people that can't control their emotions, so they may say something ridiculous like, "Oh my God, guys, can we stay on task?" Y'all never know of anybody like that. Excuse me, ma'am or sir, like, manage yourself. If you know that that is an issue for you, you don't blurt it out like a child. You say things like, "Hey, before we leave, guys, if we could just make sure we have our next time that we're going to meet again." It solved the same thing, but you're controlling your emotions. You have to know yourself. You have to self regulate because you don't want something like, your inability to control yourself. Regardless of you're in a stressful situation, you are going to be in stressful situations. Get what you need. That is why I know I don't put myself in certain environments. I don't do well in certain environments. I wouldn't put myself in it. Even if I were a doctor, for example, I would never work in an emergency room. I wouldn't do that to myself or the patient. They would have me on the gurney. I don't do well in reactive environments. I do not work well under that type of pressure. I work well under pressure where I can be thoughtful and I can be methodical. I am a science lab person. I don't care if you tell me, Cynthia, you got to have to get through these 10 science projects by the end of the year. As long as I have my own time to manage how I'm going to get through those 10 projects, you can never frighten me with a lot of work. But you can stress me out and give me complete anxiety from being reactive. If I wake up tomorrow and you're like, hey, project over here, project over there, project hot potato, project, and I don't have a time to react to it. So I would never put myself in that situation because it doesn't work well with my personality. Does that make sense? Like, a lot of times people fail because they don't know themselves. That's why we had you take that Myers-Briggs test or that personality test. It's important for you to know yourselves, guys. This is not just a job, right? This is your career. So you really need to think through what type of environment is going to work best for me. Am I an emergency room type of person? Or maybe I am a family practice type of person where I can manage how many people coming in, I can manage my time, I can think. I'm a very linear person. I'm a head person. There's not a lot of us out there. They say you're either ruled by your head or your heart. 70% of people rule by their heart. So that means they go by how they feel. You know, there's a little short test you can take to figure out whether you're a head or a heart person. If you wake up and say, what do I feel like doing today? 9 times out of 10, you're a heart person. If you wake up in the morning saying, I wonder what I have on my to do list to do today, that means you're a head person. That means it's like, I don't care how I feel about whatever, I'm going to get done what I need to get done. Because the funny thing about head people, because when we're in the minority, and I actually they did an analysis when I was in the military. That's how I know I'm a head person as well. Um, when someone asks me something, how do I feel about something? You know what I always say? Let me think about how I feel about that. So if you know any head person in your life, don't judge us. Is there any head people here? Do you know that you're a head person? You don't is you don't Oh, all heart people here. Oh, good. I'm actually jealous. I wish I was more of a heart person, or maybe you don't know, because I never go off of my feelings. I have to think how I feel about something so I can articulate it. I never just go off of feelings. I don't know. But I'm not a heart person, so that's how that works, right? It's important for you to know that. It's important for you to know that. Why? Is it not because somebody's going to come up to you and ask, hey, are you a head or heart person? But it does help you to understand how you react to things and why you react the way that you do. And that can affect your career, my friends. I promise you it can. Another thing that's very, very important is understanding that your workplace will be very, very diverse. We always like to talk about ethnic diversity, but what people don't talk about is age diversity. That is the biggest form of diversity in the workplace. Has anybody ever worked at a workplace and their best work buddy was way older than them or way younger than them? Anybody ever had that before? I know I had, right? They're the best, right? We all have had that, and you learn so much but on both sides of it. When I was in the military, my best two of my well, my best buddy, I mean, I was like 20, so he was in his 40s. 45 was, a big deal when you're like 24, right? And he was my best buddy. He taught me everything. He was so cool. He taught me not to freak out about stuff. And we went to lunch every day together. We worked at this small base in Illinois. We ran the ROTC camps, and he was my best buddy ever, right? I also had another young lady when I worked at a pharmaceutical company, and she was in her late 40s, and she used to tell me everything. And when you're young, you're listening to them, but you don't, you still think your life is life, right? And of course, everything they ever taught me was right. But I just remember those relationships, and they stand out to me, right? And so this multi generational environment is you're going to see that more and more. And you have to ask yourself the question, how do I motivate these people? If you're on the supervisory side of it, um, and you have these older people or way younger people working for you, you have to understand that people think differently based upon their generation. We always like to put it on race and being a male or a female. What affects people way more than that is their generation. You can take a baby boomer, a grandparent from either side of the world, and they're probably going to have very similar stories. Why? Because they were raised during a certain time. Does that not make sense? Just like all of us. When we all get very, very old, even though we probably fall within the generation X, Y, and Z, we all are going to be telling our grandkids the exact same thing. We're going to be talking about COVID. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump. We're going to be talking about AI. Are we not? And our grandkids are going to be looking at us like, what? What? And we're all going to be singing the same story. I don't care where we are in the world because those things affected us. You see my point? So generational commonalities have way more in common than any other segment, right? So you guys just have to understand that you will be engaging with different people from different workplaces. The silent generation, you don't see them much unless they're in Congress. That's why I wish they would hurry up and retire. Because this generation to me is completely out of touch. I don't know how y'all feel about it. I mean, they have a place, but I don't know. Do y'all is it just me? Do you guys think that Congress should have age limits? I just think politicians should have age limits. I think it gets really, really dangerous when you have somebody that's 97 trying to make trying to make rules and policies for like 15 to 16-year olds. Is that even fair? I don't think it's fair. Like
Oh,
you say no, right?
no, not at all.
Can you see how that can be dangerous?
Yeah, they're just leading a different generation like blindly, basically.
Thank you. And it scares me for, especially, those that may be like Generation Z and younger, like my daughter's generation, like these old men who are not even going to be around in the next decade. Like literally, let's just be honest. And you're making decisions for people that aren't even born yet. That's not even fair. I feel like there should be a cutoff. I really do. I think they're so out of touch. What reality? I really do. And that can go for some teachers too. Because in college, a lot of schools, there's no age limit on teaching, especially if you have what they call a tenure. Like you can teach until you die. You're 100. There was this one thing they did a few years ago. I think it was at Harvard or some one of those schools, and the teacher was literally 97 years old. And the teacher would come and we would give them work, and then they would fall asleep, and they can't fire them. They were like, because if they're Can you imagine if I just took a nap and I just gave you guys something to do? Oh my God. My friends, there comes I pray I'm not that person. I don't want to make fun. See, look at me making fun of older people, but I pray that's not my life. I pray that when I get of age, I know how to excuse myself to go somewhere and sit down, right? Let's pray we all become those type of older people. But so the baby boom generation, you see that age group, I don't think any of us fall within that age, maybe not. Then Generation X, this is mine. Many of us probably fall within this age group, or Generation Y. Probably most of us, and then of course Generation Z. There could be a few Generation Zs here as well. Obviously, the older your generation or the newer your generation, you guys are so big on technology. I didn't grow up on technology, but technology was a big part of my work, right? Because technology came around commercially right when I was going to the military. Like I was working on computers in the military, right? So I didn't grow up on technology, but I worked up on technology. But if you were Generation Y or Z, you guys grew up on technology, so technology is easy. Look at this. Any Generation Y or Zers here? Not sure if you were born after 1996 or where's it at? Between 1981. Anybody?
Yeah, me. I was born in '82.
Okay. So Isaac, what was I going to ask about that? Oh, see, my age is showing out what I was going to ask. Where was I going with that? It was okay. If you were born 1981 or after, how do you feel about AI?
Amazing.
Anybody else? Rosanna, Avero, are you guys born after 1981?
I think it's just people are misunderstanding the the technology and what they could do. They're misleading the way how to use it and when to use it. That's my thoughts about it. But it's a great technology if you use it right.
What were you going to say, Avero?
I agree. The main thing, just like everything else, is just how we use it to better enhance our life rather than like just make us lazy. So I feel like
Hmm.
it gives a negative, how he's saying it gives a negative connotation to AI because it's just looked at an easy way out to get a solution or fix something that we can't fix or we don't want to put time into.
I'm going to tell you. So I recently transitioned into AI, sort of kind of. I mean, my background's in finance, so we kind of always dealt with software, but more so on the data side of it. I've since had to, I've gone and got a couple degrees, certificates, or whatever in IT. And one, I think, like Isaac said, AI is so misunderstood. It's kind of like the difference between when they were riding in horse and carriages and then they're moving to cars. Like, can you imagine the fear associated with that? Was it going to make needing a horse obsolete? Yeah, it was. But is that a bad thing, right? Um, did it cause newer issues? It absolutely did. Everything from, the environment, the need for oil, we had to start drilling, all that, whatever it did, to trees coming down. I mean, of course, there were negatives to it, right? But did the positives outweigh the negatives? I think most people would say, hey, I'll take a car over a horse any day, right? Not to oversimplify it, but that's kind of how I feel with AI. I mean, I of course understand AI because I've studied it, but I think most people don't understand it. Will it make certain jobs obsolete? Obsolete? Yeah, of course. Are they jobs but you know why what mostly the issue is? The jobs are not worth having salary for anymore. Like, let's face it, McDonald's workers, right? And I worked at McDonald's, my first job out of high school, excuse me, while I was in high school. But that is going to become automated. When I was in Japan, I went to Japan when I was in the military. back in the 90s. They had already automated fast food places. America still hasn't done it. If you go to certain Asian countries, you know how we have like 7-Elevens and stuff like that and Wawas? A lot of theirs are automated. Nobody works in them. Everything is computerized. Of course, they have a bigger honor system than we do. But technology alone, think about that.
Most of all the cruise ships, sorry to interrupt you, most of all the cruise ships these days now they don't have bartenders anymore. They have a robot
Wow.
making the drinks. Yep.
What? I didn't know that.
Yep. Saw it myself.
Wow. And people will say, "Oh my God, oh my God." But the problem is, some of these jobs, if you think about inflation, how much can you pay that person where it doesn't make sense anymore? They're wanting to pay McDonald's workers $20 an hour. Does that even make sense? Just to help them stay above inflation? Do you guys understand that? So, from a business perspective, if I can automate that system, why would I pay a human to do something that a robot could do way more efficiently and cheaper? Not because I don't love the human, but at what point do I am I going to be paying the guy to flip burgers $30 an hour just so he can keep up with inflation by the year 2030? Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. So that's why a lot of things are becoming automated. That's why AI is taking over those types of jobs and people are all up in arms, but it doesn't make sense. And I'm going to tell you something else. This whole thing that is happening right now in the politicians, with the farmers, all that is by design. They are lying to you guys and they're telling you, "Oh my God, we're so upset." The Democrats clutching their fake pearls, saying that they don't understand they know exactly what's going on, what's happening. They're about to automate all that stuff, guys. They're going to automate farming. That's why they're doing it. That's why, the Democrats are pretending to be. Do you really think those people can do that? Donald Trump by himself and the Republican Party can do all this and nobody in Congress can do anything about it? You are living in la la land. It's not true. So a lot of that stuff that they're doing is all because they're trying to automate. And Donald Trump is the one that says, "Hey, I'll be the bad guy. I'll be the bad guy." They're going to buy up all that farmland and they're going to automate that stuff. But nobody wants to talk about that because it's too much for a lot of people to handle. That's why they don't want to talk about it. So anyway, because if you talk about technology doing too much, then everybody's going to be against technology. So there you go. But that's what's really happening. So all this stuff that you guys see happening, them getting rid of this and them getting rid of that, you have to really ask yourself the question: who's really behind it? It is not Donald Trump. 9 times out of 10, there's some big corporate conglomerate, and they have bigger plans to automate that stuff. That's what it's really about. All right. So here's your live question for today. I want you to find a company in your field that you believe you could work for, and then name 3 things about that company. 3 things about that company, and think about, what do I want to know about this company? Remember, you're thinking about, okay, what company am I going to go into when I get out of here? Let me go do some research on a company I really like. Find 3 things that are important to you. Maybe it's, are they global or not? Maybe you want to move to California and you want to know, do they have an office in California? Maybe you're curious about, the type of customers that they have or something like that. Whatever you're curious about. 3 things. Name the company and name the 3 things that you found out about that company. Go ahead, Alvaro.
So I already work for a company that I'm pretty comfortable and I like. Can I name like 3 things that I enjoy about this company that are
Yeah,
different?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's cool. And I'm glad you found somewhere.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I've been here for almost 2 years now.
Oh, cool. That's good. So are you already in the field that you're in now, in electrical?
Yeah, I prior to this company, I worked electrical, residential, and commercial. I just did the
Oh,
school to
okay.
get more like a why rather than just how to do it in the field.
Right. I got you. That's smart. That's smart. All right. 3 things about the company. All right, my friends, that's it for tonight.
Have a good night.
All right, guys, we only got one more long day tomorrow, and then on Thursday we're really here for like promise you 5-10 minutes. You're gonna take your final. I won't even be in your way. We're just gonna talk about a couple things, and we'll be out of here. All right. So if you have any last minute questions, please make sure we ask them tomorrow. All right. I'll talk to you
Sounds
guys
good.
later. All right.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good night.